And welcome to Module 4. This week our focus is going to be on point of view and tone, as well as voice and style in your creative writing. As we have moved through the modules, your toolbox is continuing to fill with things that you're going to be using as part of your writer's craft. And so this week we're looking at specifically point of view and tone. So let's take a look at the module. We've always got the introduction that just reiterates the focus of the module. The first assignment is the module overview, and as always, it's done in feedback fruits, and all you have to do is click on open document to read the material and then respond to the questions that are asked. And remember that if you do those late, you need to email me when you've done it, as long as you're doing it before midnight Sunday of the week that it takes place in, so that I can publish the points. After the overview, then we have the required resources. This week there is less reading in the textbook, and I wanted to show you a tool. I'm not sure, you may already know about this. Let's see, I have to adjust my box here. When you're in the e-textbook, especially since we're assigned particular sections rather than the entire chapter, if you click on the down arrow for that chapter, it breaks it into the section headings. So the first one that we need to look at is narrative point of view. And I believe that, let's see, when I was reading through this, if you go to narrative structure and the narrative toolbox, narrative point of view is under narrative structure toolbox. So that's how you find that one. It's not listed as a section heading, but it's underneath narrative structure toolbox. The other two, tone and finding your voice, we've got finding your voice as a heading, but tone is right under narrative point of view. So most of the time these section headings can help you find where you need to read, but sometimes you do need to scroll down to find them if they're not one of the section headings that is highlighted in blue, like a main section heading. So remember, you only have to read the sections that are assigned. There's a note here in the online materials that says the generative exercises included in this chapter are strongly encouraged. So again, it's a good idea to read through those, skim the exercises, and to try to do at least one or two with each chapter, because they again are building that toolbox, giving you an opportunity to practice the things that you're learning. So build in some time to take a look at the exercises and then to do a couple of them. They are not graded, they're not submitted anyway, but you might be keeping a notebook or a file on your computer where you do all those exercises that you've chosen to do. Along with the reading in the textbook this time, there is a variety of other reading materials. The first one is a fictional short story. It's one that you can listen to. It was challenging for me to read because this is material that was kind of new to me, but I learned some things in reading it. So if you're somebody who knows more about Metal Gear Solid, Phantom Pain, etc., and to access this, all you need to do is scroll down. You don't have to click on anything here at the top. This is from our library. You can just scroll down and that's where it is. Also, you can listen to this. Sometimes, especially if you're doing your reading at the end of the day, it's really helpful to read along as the computer reads it out loud to you. So that's a tool that you might try using. Then we have the next one is a humorous essay, an imagined monologue with an inanimate object that is a really good example of voice, tone, and style in nonfiction. It's funny. It was a nice, quick read. The next one is formatting your spec script while social distancing. This is one that takes a look at a variety of of scripts, television scripts, and you don't have to read all of them or read the entire script of each one, but it's just interesting to look at the format that they're in, how spec scripts are written, what they focus on, and there may be shows that you've actually watched, so it's very interesting to see what those look like in script format. The next one is a short video on YouTube of Sylvia Plath reading one of her poems, Tulips. It's an old video, well, it's an old tape. It's not a video. It doesn't show her actually reading it. You just hear her. Um, but it's a longer poem, and it does give you an opportunity to hear how her voice is reflected in the lines of poetry, as well as in the way that she reads the poetry. If you scroll down on the video or from the YouTube, in the comments is the actual text of the poem. And personally, I never get anything from just hearing somebody read their poetry out loud unless I have it actually in front of me. So I was very appreciative that the text of the poem is actually included with hearing her read. The great thing about that is that you can also see how it's written on the page and how she reads it to reflect how it's written on the page, the pauses with the commas, the line breaks, etc. Then there is an article, The Sounds of Yourself, a creative nonfiction piece by Sonia Huber, who I actually got to meet one time. She's a graduate of Ohio State University's MFA program, and she was in one of the classes that I have several friends who've been in writing workshops with me graduated with her. It's a really good article about the uses of many voices, that we don't have just one voice when we do creative writing, but often the voice is determined by what it is we're writing, the particular style we want for that piece of writing, but and also who we are, because we change over time, our interests change, our focuses change. But it's a nice piece about how rather than just one voice that you're trying to find, that we actually have many voices as writers. The next one, Drive Script Analysis, looks at the film Drive and examines, analyzes the script with that. Again, an opportunity to see how a script is written. Then finally, a reading that talks about voice in poetry. It's nice that we have the audio of Sylvia Plath reading her poem, but it's important to understand how voice in a poem is not necessarily the voice of the person writing it, that they may take on a persona, they may have a character that they're giving voice to. So this is an important one to read, especially now that you've had a chance to do some workshopping. Some of you may have workshopped someone else's poems, and that may happen again when we do the second workshop in Module 6. So it's important that you have understanding about how voice is manifested in poetry. The additional support materials this time are both on the poets.org webpage, short articles about both speaker and voice in poetry. So those are worth taking a look at, especially if you're interested in writing poetry. That's the reading for this week, and we have really only one assignment this week. So that's a pleasant break after last week where you had quite a bit of work to do. This week we have one creative journal, Define Your Voice. And again, with the journals, there's always two parts. This one is a little bit different because rather than actually writing a creative work yourself, you're going to select a passage from a creative work you have read for this class that shows point of view, tone, and style. Remember to cite the source when using quotes. So it's not just all the readings that we have done, it has to be a creative work. So it has to be a poem, a script, a nonfiction piece, or a fiction piece. It can't be any of the how-to or textbook readings that we've done on craft. It has to be a creative work. You can use any of the creative works that we've had under required resources from Module 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to pick a passage, and then you're going to do some analysis by answering the reflection questions. And as always, be sure that you're answering all of the questions in order to be eligible for full points. And there's some pretty specific information that's being asked for this time, because this is an analysis that's related to point of view as well as tone and style. So When you're, let's see, let me go through these one at a time. First of all, you're going to identify what point of view the author is using in the piece that you've chosen, first, second, or third person. You're going to both identify it and define the point of view by its use of pronouns. So how can you tell that it's first person? What pronouns are they using that indicate it's first person or second person or third person? So it's not enough just to identify it. You have to give evidence by pointing out where the pronouns are in the piece that indicate which point of view it is. The second bullet point, will you use a similar point of view in your own creative work? So if you've identified first person in the piece that you're working on analyzing, think about, will you use first person in the creative work that you do, specifically for the rough draft that we're going to do in Module 5, and then revise for Module 7. Third bullet point, give some examples of word choice, syntax, line break, or dialogue that puts this author's unique fingerprint on their work. So here's where you're going to be doing quoting. We need to know exact words from the creative piece that you've selected to analyze. So you're going to be doing quotes. Anytime you quote, you have to do some kind of citation. And we use MLA in this class. You need to do both a parenthetical in-text citation immediately following the quote in MLA format. You also need to list full reference information at the end of your creative journal submission. So whatever the source is for the particular piece that you are analyzing, that information needs to be provided as part of the citation. If you're not familiar with MLA, or maybe you need a refresher, go to the top of the course webpage, click on Shapiro Library, then click on Citing Your Sources Guide, and then click on MLA Style. And there's everything you need to know, including example citations, right here on your screen for you to take a look at it. There's some additional frequently asked, oh, there are no frequently asked questions for this one. But everything that you need should be right here. So if you're not familiar or you need a refresher, this is where you need to go, and that will help you out. Citation is not optional for this assignment. You should be using quotes, and so anytime you quote, you have to give credit to the original source, and that means you have to do citation both with parenthetical citations and a listing of full reference material at the end. And then the final bullet point, what is one aspect of the author's tone or style that you would like to use or avoid using in your own work? So again, the piece that you've picked to analyze, you're going to discuss what's one thing about their tone or style that you would either like to imitate or you would like to not use. And beyond just saying what that is, you need to give some information about why you would make that choice. Why do you find it appealing, or why would you find it useful? Why would you want to avoid it? Maybe you think it's snarky, or it sounds condescending, or the language is such that it wouldn't appeal to your audience. But what we're looking for in the response to that question is you thinking about your craft, making some conscious choices about tone and style, being able to identify it in someone else's work, but also starting to think about how you might use it in your work. What would be the advantage to using that same tone or style? What might be a disadvantage? As always, there's a link to the guidelines and rubric. It's the same guidelines and rubric that has been used for all the creative journals, but it's never a bad idea to take a look at those and review. I believe that is everything for this week. If you click again, we would be into Module 5. One thing that I will say, because this is a little bit lighter week, this is a good time to start doing some exploration around both your genre choice for your rough draft that you'll be writing in Module 5, and possibly doing some pre-writing, doing some brainstorming, doing some, possibly outlining, sketching out scenes, thinking about characters, thinking about plot. Anything that you can do is pre-writing to get you ready to go then in Module 5 is a great idea. And if you have time this week to start working on the rough draft, feel free to do that as well. It might be helpful to go ahead and take a look at the milestone 1 guidelines and rubric in Module 5. That'll tell you specifically what's required with the rough draft. And then the final project guidelines and rubric will tell you what's going to be done, or what's going to be the end product in Module 7 after you've revised your rough draft. So you can take a look at those as well. As always, if you have general questions, be sure and post them in the discussion, the general questions discussion, and if it's something pertinent to grading um, or a personal situation, directly email me. Just one other thing that I wanted to mention, it's in the announcement. Let's see, let me make it big enough so you can see it. At the beginning of the Module 4 announcement, I have outlined a task that I encourage you to do as a way to process the feedback that you received in the module last week where we did the mini workshop. I'm sure by now you've probably looked at your feedback, because most of us are always pretty excited about getting feedback, having somebody else read our work and seeing what they think. But beyond just reading it and then discarding it, it's a good idea to try to have some system for processing it. So I have a 5 steps that you can use to process it. They're pretty self-explanatory. And I encourage you to do it at the beginning of the week before you start on the Module 4 stuff, just so that you can kind of have some closure to the workshop last week. And by processing it in a way like this, using these 5 steps, we're less likely to take it personally or have our feelings hurt, because we're thinking more about what can I learn from both thinking about what I shared with others as well as the feedback that I got, and what might I do with that feedback. So again, if it's not required, it's not turned in, it's not graded, but it's a tool that you can use to process feedback after you have shared your work with someone else. So again, if you have any questions about that, you know where to find me.